There we go. So good to see you all. Good to see KT and Ida, Richard, Beck, Mikhail, Paul. So we're going to begin with a few prayers. This is our illumination of the intention class. Sneha's going to put up some prayers here. So try to think sincerely when we're saying this. Like, for instance, some of the prayers, not in this particular one, it says, I go for refuge sincerely or from my heart to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Here it just says, I go for refuge. So try to think of the causes of that refuge. That is some apprehension, some uncertainty or fear that we are not able to dictate whether we're going to end up in the lower realms in the future or whether we're going to be able to continue on the Bodhisattva path. We need some sort of support, some refuge, some protection, and the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the perfect sources of that refuge. Sangye chodang soke chognam la jangju bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye chodang soke chognam la jangju badu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. If you take time to think of each of those words and the prayer like that, delving into the meaning and trying to develop it while saying that, then when the Dalai Lama gives teachings, when other lamas give teachings, and that verse is said, and you recite it, it can bring back a remembering consciousness of that taking of refuge that can become much more powerful rather than just reciting words and thinking, this is pro forma, this is what we have to do as Buddhists or something like that. Now, a short mandala offering. Traditionally, before teachings, offering the mandala to create the merit to be able to be successful in listening to the teachings. By offering this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. And Snehi just moved down just a little bit on that page there, so that Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami, that means, Idam means this. So in Sanskrit, the word's order doesn't necessarily, we would say, I offer this precious mandala to the guru. So idam means this, guru is, guru, ratna means precious, mandalakam, it means mandala, niryatayami means I offer. So that's what that little verse at the end in Sanskrit is. That's sort of like at the point when you let go of your mandala. Okay, so now we're going to do a little meditation, as we usually do. Sit comfortably with your Here we go. Sit comfortably with your body relaxed. Relax your mind. Remind yourself that you don't have to attend to anything else now. You don't have to think about anything else. Place your attention, first of all, on the breathing. Recognize it. Once you've recognized it, Hold it in mindfulness, recognizing when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out. Recognize when you have a long breath and a short breath, to the exclusion of all other thoughts. If you get tempted thinking about other things, trying to multitask, remind yourself you don't have to think about anything else right now. The reason for focusing on the breathing is to let go of other thoughts that are coursing through your mind, to reduce their intensity and their frequency, in order to replace the random thoughts that are going through your mind with a proper dedication, or with a proper motivation. Let go of placing attention on your body. Let go of placing attention or grasping to your identity, I. Once you've been successful in keeping a sequence of those breathings, maybe 7 or more or 21, without being distracted, bring your attention now to your mental consciousness rather than the breathing. Switching objects of observation here, you're observing the mental consciousness, which itself is very subtle, so we have to recognize it by recognizing its contents. The mental images, the thoughts, the afflictions. Maybe you sense you're angry or whatever. You may notice a mental fatigue if you were up late last night, or thoughts. You may notice thoughts of the past, remembering what's happened in the past, or thinking about what's going to happen in the future, making judgments about the present. All of these are like clouds in the clear light of our mind, clear light nature of our mind, conventional clear light nature. We can begin to, by letting go of those thoughts, we may find moments of quiet between the thoughts, holding on to that. Or even when, once you're trained, even when the thoughts are present, simply by recalling that that thought could not be present unless the mind had this clear light nature of not posing any hindrance to the rising of thoughts, not posing any hindrance to the absorption of those thoughts back into the consciousness. You begin to develop a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind, the conventional clear light nature. Not something that you could see like with the eyes, like a blue sky or something like that, but something that's known with your eyes of wisdom and gnosis. That is that understanding of the lack of any obstruction. This understanding can bring forth a great joy, recognizing that we can develop all of the wonderful qualities that we lack now. We can divest ourselves of all of the faults without doubt, even though we maybe think it's futile now. We can get rid of our anger, our attachment, our low self-esteem, whatever, our pride. This is what's also called the developmental Buddha nature. We're not yet Buddha, but it is because of this nature, conventional nature of the mind, we can develop qualities. The fact that we can recognize this now is due to this auspicious moment of having found a life of leisure and endowment. Found in the sense that karma threw us here, through great effort in the past. We created the karma to be born as a human. When the Dharma was existing, when there was community of friends and practitioners, benefactors, the Buddha had, the Dharma has not degenerated. We have faith, or at least hope in the Dharma. This incredibly rare situation, which when recognized, can impel us to use it for a greater purpose than just the goals of this life alone, to be, famous or well-liked, to be loved, to be powerful, to be in a position to enjoy all the pleasure of the senses. Those are the ordinary dharmas, the four positive, negative dharmas, wanting to have wealth, wanting to have pleasure of the senses, wanting to be famous, wanting to be liked and loved. And their counterparts that are called the eight worldly concerns. We can use this life instead to progress upon the path that leads to liberation from cyclic existence, a freedom from all of the faults of our mind. We can be incredibly blissful and happy. We can become a source of joy to others, inspiration to others, rather than harming them. When they say our name, they develop great respect and affection. But just that alone, just achieving a kind of temporary piece of this lifetime is not enough. We will be reborn in cyclic existence again and again. But there is a solution. We can achieve the state of nirvana, liberation, for ourselves by practicing the three higher trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. But the Buddha advised those of sharper intellect, his bodhisattva disciples, that they should not be content by following and actualizing his Hinayana teachings. He actually referred to them, my lesser vehicle teachings. You should embrace the Mahayana because all living beings are exactly equal to you in wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. They all have the same Buddha potential. They have been depthlessly kind to us through numberless lifetimes and will again in the future. They're like our precious mothers, taking cognizance of them, foregoing the achievement of personal nirvana, and instead working to achieve complete enlightenment. Following the bodhisattva path is a great purpose that we can use this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment for. We can develop renunciation, compassion leading to bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes the ultimate nature of phenomena. We can accumulate the collections of merit and wisdom that give rise to the Buddha's form, body, and mental body, the Dharmakaya. To do that, we have to know the Buddha's teachings on how to practice those yogas, so to speak. We need to understand the conventional truth, the ultimate truth, as explained by Nagarjuna in commentary, commenting on the Buddha's Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, Chandrakirti's introduction to that in his Madhyamaka Avatara, and Lama Khapa's explanation, finer detail of Chandrakirti's commentary in his Gompa Rapsal, the text that we're studying, Illumination of the Intent. I think I'm going to participate today in order to develop the wisdom of hearing, contemplation, and wisdom by listening, evaluating what's said, contemplating it, and when we have moments of clarity, holding our minds on those insights, developing the wisdom of meditation for the purpose, ultimate purpose of becoming enlightened, and the temporary purpose of overcoming our problems, becoming a friend to all beings, even our enemies, overcoming our fear of climate change and politics and everything else. I'm going to participate in the class today in order to become eventually a Buddha, in order to quickly, perfectly, without error, lead sentient beings out of suffering into everlasting blissful happiness of enlightenment. That's my purpose in attending this class today. So then bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you all. Pranav, nice to see you again. You join us again. We were just mentioning before class, we have now, I think we have at least 3 Indian students from the land where the Buddha first taught.
Which is quite unusual.
Yeah, maybe not all classes. Yeah, we have. So before we begin, anyone have any Dharma question that they need answering, or any doubts about our previous classes up till now? KT, are you okay? Any questions? You were off for a bit.
Sorry for the delay on my mute. Thank you. I was thinking about the four form and then four formless concentrations. Do the form ones, do they relate to building Rupakaya and the formless towards a building or developing of the Dharmakaya? And just thinking about these.
I don't think so. In certain tantric practices, say for instance in Vajrayogini, at the end of the practice, you imagine sending out light, and all of the formless realm absorbs in the form of blue light to the top of your body, and all of the form realm absorbs in red light to the middle of your body, and the desire realm, so that all of existence are encompassed in those three realms. All of that absorbs in white light to the bottom of your body. So blue often associated with the mind, red with the speech, white with the body. But I don't think that in general, those three realms are connected with the development of Dharmakaya or Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, and so forth. They are states of mind. Let's say you could be born in those realms, or you could develop the mental states of those realms, even in a human form, what we say a human basis. We have a desire realm body, but we can cause our mental consciousness to be elevated to the consciousness of the form realm, from which it is a better location to meditate on emptiness. So it's said that it's sufficient even to achieve the preparation to the first form absorption, first form realm, the Brahma realm. That's sufficient. That's called the not deficient, not unable concentration. But the bodhisattvas often use the first form absorption or the second and so forth to meditate on emptiness. Generally, the formless absorptions, the mind is not as acute, so they don't often use the formless absorptions, but they are practiced in various ways. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. So anyone else have a Dharma question? Okay. So we have started, or maybe you could say we finished the fifth ground. We haven't quite finished the fifth ground, the difficult to overcome, called or hard to conquer, meaning, the etymology you recall is that the Bodhisattva at this point is it's difficult for the Maras to overcome that Bodhisattva. It doesn't mean only the external Maras, like the Devaputra Maras that are actual physical beings that can become obstacles to us. Maybe we can think by analogy also enemies, in our lifetime, or people that cause us distress, but also our aggregates, our afflictions, the Mara of death, and so forth. None of them can overcome the Bodhisattva on the fifth ground. So we talked a little bit about that. There was a quotation from the Precious Garland at the beginning. The fifth bhumi is hard to conquer or difficult to overcome because it's so hard for the Maras to subdue it. Here, mastery in understanding arises on the subtle points of the Arya truths and so forth. So the subtle, the wisdom on the fifth ground, although we think of the sixth ground as having, we talk about the surpassing practice of the perfection of wisdom. On the fourth and on the fifth grounds, there was a burgeoning of wisdom into on the fourth ground, on the 37 harmonies of enlightenment, special wisdom that understood those. Here on the Four Noble Truths and so forth. And the Ratnavali said, as for its ripening effect, the Bodhisattva would be able to become a king of the Tushita gods, the same realm where the Tushita pure realm is, just outside of the, so at the same level of mind as the form realm gods called the Tushita gods, or the joyous land. Tushita is the same word in Sanskrit that we translate in English as Ganden, like the Ganden monastery that Lama Tsongkhapa created. And just outside of that desire realm where ordinary beings can be born, there is a pure land called Tushita Pure Land, where the future Buddhas are enthroned as the regent there. As for its ripening effect, the Bodhisattva will be born as a king of the Tushita gods. He undoes the contents of the afflicted views crafted by all proponents of extremes, or as Jeffrey translated that second verse, through the maturation of these qualities, he becomes a king of the gods abiding in the joyous land, means Tushita. He overcomes the sources of afflictions and the views of all forders, so what we call the Tirthakas. And so that we talked about the outline, becoming superior in meditative absorption and mastering the truths. There was the verse from Madhyamaka, exceeding in meditative absorption and in the truths of the wise, in the sumati. So that means the sort of an epithet for the Arya beings. This Bodhisattva gains mastery in refined understanding as well. Or as Jeffrey says, his concentration excels and he gains great skill in knowledge of the subtle nature of the truths of those of good mind. So that means the Four Noble Truths. On this fifth ground of the 10 perfections, there is the surpassing practice of meditative absorption, or dhyana. In Tibetan, say samten. We talked about that. And let's see. Not only does the Bodhisattva become superior in meditative absorption, but gains mastery in refined understanding of the nature of the truths of the wise. We talked about that. The 10 Ground Sutra says that the fifth ground Bodhisattva comes to be versed in the Four Noble Truths of suffering, its origin, cessation, and path. And separately, it also says he becomes versed in the conventional and the ultimate truth. So we talked about that. All the four truths can be encompassed in the two truths. If you talk about truths, it's sufficient to say there are two truths. The Four Noble Truths are mentioned for particular reasons, but they are included in the two truths. Rocio, do you know which of the Four Noble Truths are located in which of the two truths?
I think the truth of suffering is the conventional truth,
Yeah.
and then the truth of cessation is also in the conventional truth.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. That's your position, is it? What about the truth of the origin of suffering?
Oh, the origin of suffering is in the in conventional truth, and then the path could be conventional truth.
So all four of them are conventional truth.
No, but the last one is ultimate truth. The truth of cessation or truth of nirvana must be ultimate truth.
Okay, there you go. You had said before that was conventional truths. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry.
So of the Four Noble Truths, three of them are considered conventional truth. And one of them, the truth of cessation, is considered to be an ultimate truth. So we're going to explain it, go into that a little more detail. So, it mentioned here that there's a question of how there can be four truths distinct from the two truths when it's clearly stated in the Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. So we mentioned about that, the sutra where Shakyamuni Buddha came back to again have reunion with his dad, the king. And in that sutra, it is mentioned, very famous quotations, that there are two truths, as well as, so that's a sutra, and there are other sutras that say there are only two truths, but that's one that's usually enumerated, as well as shastras, the difference between sutras and shastras. So Nagarjuna's treatise, Nagarjuna was not living at the time of the Buddha, so his texts are called shastras that are, in our Tibetan tradition, we talk about all of this, the texts that were enunciated by the Buddha or in his presence are called are translated in Tibetan as the Kangyur, and those that are commentaries or shastras are the Tengyur. So the Fundamental Wisdom, Nagarjuna's famous text, also mentions that the number of truths are exhausted within the division of the two truths. That means there's nothing else besides the two truths. And then Chandrakirti's commentary said there's no truth not encompassed in the two truths. They are taught in order to recognize, to demonstrate what is to be given up, what is to be relinquished. So usually when we talk about practice, we talk about things that are to be undertaken, the practice of virtue, the practice of dharma, and those things that are to be relinquished. This is a different word than ceased or something, or abandoned, those things that are to be relinquished. So what are to be relinquished are the suffering, its cause, and and what is to be affirmed is the class of the enlightened phenomena, or when we talk about the 108 phenomena from form to omniscient mind that are mentioned so many times in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, a certain number of them, 53 and 55 in each class, of those things that are to be relinquished and those things which are to be undertaken and so forth. Of these, the commentary states that the truth of suffering, its origin, and the path belong to conventional truth, while the truth of cessation belongs to ultimate truth. Okay. And then in his commentary to the 60 stanzas of reasoning, we mentioned this last time. This is where we started last time. Chandrakirti wrote his commentary to that. He explains that nirvana is an ultimate truth, and the other three truths are conventional truths, and that nirvana here refers to the truth of cessation, so that all cessations, even before nirvana, say on the path of seeing and the path of meditation, the second bhumi, third bhumi, and so forth, all of those true cessations are ultimate truths. So that was what we were grappling with before. So let me just reiterating again, on that page, he said, furthermore, in his commentary to the 60 stanzas of reasoning, Chandrakirti points out how the Buddha accepts the possibility of direct knowledge of the truth of cessation. So, ngunsum du shepa, is it rather than ngunsum du topa? So, direct knowledge of Gokten. That means Gokten means the truth of cessation. What that means is that in that meditative equipoise, where you are experiencing cessation, you're certain of the afflictions are ceased. Your consciousness is knowing that, although you're not at that point saying, "Oh, I have ceased the afflictions," but you are conscious of that. You have a direct realization of that, in the same way that you have a direct realization of emptiness, and therefore those cessations are categorized as emptinesses. They are said to be emptiness. And we talked about also last time, not all emptinesses are cessations. You can have a realization. Well, let's say everything has as its ultimate nature emptiness. My microphone, my iPad, my nose, all of them, their ultimate nature is emptiness, but they are not cessations. But all true cessations are emptinesses, and that the bodhisattva on the in meditative equipoise, when they are experiencing cessation, they are knowing emptiness, right? They have a direct realization of emptiness, and they have that direct understanding of cessation at the same time. I'm making sense. Everything. So this is just sort of reviewing what we said before, but sometimes maybe some things went unheard or ununderstood. How are we doing, Mikhail? Oh, sorry. Maybe you were. I thought you were looking at something. You may have been talking to your cat or something like that. Do you have any question?
So sorry.
Do you have any question?
No. Sorry.
Was it your cat or your?
No, my daughter.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what you're doing. So, Richard, we okay? Okay. David? Okay. Paul, any additions, comments? Okay. So, let's just, we're going over this again because we're almost finished with this chapter, and it's worth understanding the subtle points here. Chandrakirti points out in his commentary to the 60 stanzas. So Nagarjuna wrote the 60 stanzas of reasoning. Chandrakirti wrote a famous commentary to it. In that, he points out how the Buddha accepts the possibility of direct knowledge of the truth of cessation, and how this would be untenable for the Buddhist essentialists who assert that direct valid cognitions to possess as their objects things endowed with intrinsic characteristics. Remember what that means? Sounds complicated, right? Don, can you unravel that for us? What is he saying there? Sounds like a lot of complicated words, but it's quite simple.
I think he's saying that if you see cessation is inherently existent, then you won't see it correctly.
Okay, so who are the Buddhist essentialists?
I think the Vaibhashikas and South Tantrikas.
Now, let's see here. I'm trying to find where that word is there.
I ngubor mawa.
Ngubang Mawa, yeah. Ngubang Mawa. So those who propound that phenomena are truly existent. So it would be untenable. That means the people who are in Ngubang Mawa, they say that to have a direct realization of something, that phenomena has to be impermanent, right? You can have direct realization of forms and sounds with your eye and ear consciousness, smells, tastes, and so forth. You can have direct mental realization of phenomena that are impermanent, like the aggregates and so forth, but you would not be able to have a direct realization of something which is permanent, like cessation. For them, you would understand that indirectly, perhaps. You would not have a direct realization of selflessness, according to the lower schools. You would have a direct realization that the aggregates themselves are impermanent, and indirectly, you would realize that the person is selfless as a result of that, is lacking a permanent, partnerless, and independent self, for instance. So is that more or less clear? In his own tradition, Chandrakirti establishes the understanding of how cessation is directly known in terms of the realization of suchness by means of the uncontaminated wisdom, gnosis of meditative equipoise. So if cessation were a conventional truth, such presentations would become utterly untenable. If cessation were a conventional truth, why is that? Because in the meditative equipoise that's directly realizing emptiness, no conventional phenomena appear to the consciousness, right? So if cessations were conventional truths, that all of the other Buddhist tenets say that cessations, true cessations, are conventional truths, that their presentation wouldn't be possible through this understanding of what's actually happening, that you are recognizing cessation in that meditative equipoise. William, what are you thinking?
I'm looking at page 230 in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation,
Yeah.
which begins, for example, in the non-existence of the horns of a rabbit. And I'd ask you to please explain the difference between the horns of a rabbit and the pot in this example in relation to what you're describing now.
Okay, well, that's coming in the next paragraph. So we'll attend to that in a second, okay? So just here, in his own tradition, that means in the Prasangika tradition or system, Chandrakirti establishes the understanding of how cessation is directly known in terms of the realization of suchness by the uncontaminated wisdom of meditative equipoise. Okay. So if cessation were a conventional truth, such presentations would become utterly untenable. Furthermore, Chandrakirti repeatedly endeavors, or as Jeffrey says, he proves with great effort, rather than saying repeatedly, to establish the necessity of direct realization of the truth of suchness, to realize emptiness, in other words, when nirvana is actualized. Therefore, to speak of the truth of cessation as a conventional truth would indicate an incomplete analysis. Okay, now I'm going to get back to William's question in a moment because that hasn't come up in the text yet about the horns of a rabbit, but Snehi has a question or a comment.
Thank you very much, George. Actually, I may have misheard you, but did you just say that for the lower schools, for them, the aggregates are impermanent and they realize the selflessness of person indirectly?
Yes. Well, it's not just the lower schools that say the aggregates are impermanent. Everyone
Okay.
says the aggregates are
Right.
impermanent. But the point is, for them, say non-Mahayana schools, what you can directly realize are only impermanent phenomena. Things that are permanent cannot be directly realized. They're realized indirectly. So, say, for instance, if you talk about the selflessness of the person, we talked about this in low rig and in tenets and other things. You are realizing selflessness by means of a direct realization, because what you're directly realizing is the aggregates are impermanent. So it's by means of a direct realization, but you're not realizing the selflessness directly. This sounds like a contradiction in terms. You're realizing it implicitly or indirectly by realizing that the aggregates are impermanent. That's their position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I will re-listen because I'm very confused now. So for them, when we say they're on the path of seeing and they have a direct realization of emptiness and, along the path, or does that not apply to them?
So we're talking about two different things here. We're
Yeah.
talking about tenet systems, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. According to their tenets, you don't even realize emptiness of phenomena. You realize only selflessness of persons, and their selflessness of person is something that the Prasangika says is just the gross selflessness of persons, not even the subtle selflessness of persons. So the tenet systems aren't, from the Prasangika point of view, you really do have hearers and solitary realizers who do realize emptiness, but they are not, you would have to say they are not following the Hinayana tenets, because they are realizing that phenomena are empty of inherent existence and that the person is empty of inherent existence. So there's a little bit of
Okay.
what do you call it? I can't remember the word. It's sort of like
Conflating.
saying one thing, but the practitioners who actually achieve those goals are not following those tenets.
Right. So within the tenet system of the lower schools, for them, on the basis of them realizing the aggregates are impermanent, they indirectly realize the selflessness of person.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that seems to be implying they're even talking about the gross, according to their tenets, the gross selflessness of persons, which means that the person is empty is devoid of being permanent, partless, and independent. So if you realize that they're impermanent, you've overcome that. From the Prasangika point of view, that isn't even, that's only an intellectually formed affliction, right? That's not, that's, go on.
But then, George, when we say for the lower schools that they also recognize that, the permanent partless thing is gross, but then they realize the emptiness of the self-existent, substantially something
self-supporting, substantially existent is one way of translating it. Yeah, they realize that. So here it's not exactly clear how they realize that. Realize that they don't realize the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person directly. They realize it indirectly, but I'm not sure exactly of the process there. The usual analogy that's given is that talking about realizing that the aggregates are impermanent. Okay, so I'll leave that. I'll do some.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So how are we doing? This is sort of like review, but maybe necessary. So then the text continued. Now, although the negation of true existence, which is the object of negation, right? When you're actually meditating on emptiness, what you are negating is true existence. From the Prasangika point of view, true existence includes inherent existence. From the Svatantrika point of view, true existence, things can lack true existence, but they can still be inherently existent. So there's a little bit of difference there. Now, although the negation of true existence, the object of negation, the negation of true existence on a given basis is defined as ultimate truth, right? That's the emptiness of that is ultimate truth. This does not require that the object of negation of whatever constitutes ultimate truth is necessarily non-existent. Okay. Nadine, can you explain what that means?
I'm sorry, I can't.
So, although the negation of true existence, so if you prove through logic and eventually realize that there is no true existence, right? That's the object of negation of emptiness, right? Although the negation of true existence, the object of negation on a given basis is defined as ultimate truth, this does not entail that the object of negation of whatever constitutes ultimate truth is necessarily non-existent. So, for instance, we talked earlier many times in different contexts that there were different kinds of objects of negation. There were objects of negation that existed, such as the afflictions. So, when you say object of negation, it doesn't mean that the afflictions don't exist. It means that they are eventually to be abandoned, right? And then we talked about objects of negation that do not exist, like true existence, inherent existence. So those are things that we infer, our mind grasps to, because phenomena appear to be inherently existent. They appear to be truly existent. And we have, even in meditation, we have a mental image of them truly existent, inherently existent, and our mind believes that. So in order to get rid of that belief, that grasping to true existence, we have to refute the object that the mind is believing is there, right? It's like you see the phenomena, it looks like it's truly existed, it looks like it's Santa Claus. You want to get rid of your childish mind that's believing it's Santa Claus. So you refute that it's Santa Claus. You refute that it's truly existent. But also there are other phenomena that are called objects of negation that are to be negated. That is the actual grasping. That has to be gotten rid of, so it has to be negated. So that's what's being talked about here. Although the negation of true existence, the object of negation on a given basis is defined as ultimate truth, this does not mean that the object of negation of whatever constitutes ultimate truth is necessarily non-existent. So if the delusions, the grasping is existent, right? That's an object of negation. Rocio, what do you think?
So just so I don't get lost, so the grasping is existent, because you're saying that some of the things are not existent, like inherent existence,
right?
What about, and then you went further and said the grasping. Is the
The grasping exists. Grasping is a conventional phenomenon. That's existing, and you got to get rid of that, right? So the way that you get rid of the way that you can cause abandonment of the grasping or cessation of the grasping, cessation of the delusions, is by realizing that the object that they are believing in, that the object that you're grasping to, does not exist. That's the logic that, that proves there is no inherent existence. By doing that repeatedly and realizing that the thing you were believing in doesn't exist, finally you have kind of like an aha moment. Oh, that doesn't exist. And that habit mind, the imprint of that grasping, begins to diminish and eventually can be totally ceased, totally abandoned. That's the process. This is stuff that we've talked about again and again, but in different contexts, looking at it from different ways, it sounds maybe different.
The way you said it in this last thing is very inspiring. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm glad you expect. So then the text continues. For example, in the praise to the ultimate expanse, that's the, remember, did we talk about this before? Is this going into, Shankar, what do you think?
This is back to Rothio's question. So you mentioned, you used grasping as an example, but here when it talks about, it does not entail that the object of negation, blah, 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 of what constitutes ultimate truth is necessarily non-existent. What is it saying? It's saying it's not a pervasion, or I guess what I'm trying to say is that any object of negation that constitutes ultimate truth is the inherent existence of something.
No, that's the point. It's not necessarily, the objects of negation are not, that's generally, we would say, the object of negation. But there are also objects of negation that do exist. They're called objects of negation because they are to be ultimately abandoned or negated. They're called...
So here negated does not necessarily mean negated as in...
shown to be non-existent. No, doesn't mean
shown to be non-existent. Interesting. Okay.
So Paul, what do you think? So
I was just gonna reiterate. I think what you were saying is that what when we hear the phrase object of negation, we think, a self of phenomena or inherent existence or something. But I think if I understand what he's saying, is Chandrakirti is saying that there are objects to be negated, which include other things.
Yeah, to be negated in the sense of to be abandoned.
Right.
Say, for instance, we talk about the objects of negation of reasoning and the objects of negation, I can't remember the others, but I think of experience.
Of the path.
Of the path, yeah. Right, of the experience of the path. So that means the objects that are of negation of the path, or in terms of your own experience, that are to be negated, that means those things that are to be abandoned, means the grasping and so forth, and the delusions, all of the things that are actually abandoned on the path. They are also called objects of negation. So here's a quotation from the praise to the ultimate expanse. I'm not sure why Chimpa chooses to call it that. It's called the Dharma Dhatu, right?
Oh, the basic. Oh, sorry.
Come in?
Sorry, talking to myself. I said basis or foundation.
Okay. So praise to the ultimate expanse is the Dharma Dhatu Stotra, also called the Dharma Dhatu Stava. So stotra and stava both mean praise. And sometimes this particular phrase written by Nagarjuna, that's what the Tibetans believe. Some of the Indians, the Western scholars say, oh, it's not clear, maybe it's not written by Nagarjuna. Tibetans completely believe, because it's so clear and in accordance with the Prasangika position, that it's definitely written by Nagarjuna. Hopkins calls it praise to the element of qualities. But we know the word Dharma Dhatu, right? You know the word Dharma Dhatu? Who can I ask? Pranav, do you know the word Dharma Dhatu?
Venerable, I could translate it. That is the essence of Dharma, or the foundation of Dharma.
Yeah, something like that. So Dhatu, generally when we talk about phenomena, we say that all impermanent phenomena are included in the 5 aggregates, or the 12 entrances, or ayutana. Remember, we talked about the 5 aggregates, the 12 ayatana, and the 18 dhatu, or the 18 elements, or what does Chimpa translate here? Expanse, I don't know. What that means is the dhatus there are 18 dhatus. There are 6 sense bases, 6 objects of those, and so forth, that make up the 12 entrances. And the 18 dhatus also include the objects of those. So the Dharma Dhatu, according to classical Buddhism, means the objects that are exclusive to mental consciousness. The objects that are exclusive to mental consciousness, that you can't see. You can't see the Dharma Dhatu with your eyes. You can't hear the Dharma Dhatu with your ears, right? So they are exclusive to mental consciousness. So I think we know what Dharma Dhatu means. I don't know why there's a need, especially because in Sanskrit, the name of this praise is the praise to the Dharma Dhatu. I don't know why you need to translate it. So this particular, these 2 stanzas are there. Jimpa translates, that which, if not known, makes one revolve in the 3 worlds, the 3 realms, which definitely abides in all beings. To that Dharma Dhatu, to that ultimate expanse, I bow and pay homage. That which is the cause of samsara, from purifying this very thing comes the purity that is nirvana. Dharmakaya 2 is this. Again, a little bit convoluted. Hopkins translates those 2 verses like this: homage and obeisance to the element of qualities, to the Dharma Dhatu, when it is not thoroughly understood. So in this context, remember I said Dharma Dhatu means those objects that are exclusively objects of mental consciousness. Usually that's what we say, Dharma Dhatu. So the main Dharma Dhatu is emptiness, right? You can't see emptiness with your, you can't realize emptiness with your eye consciousness. You can't hear it directly and so forth. So it is the main thing. So homage and obeisance to the Dharma Dhatu, when it is not thoroughly understood, when emptiness is not thoroughly understood, one wanders in the 3 existences, right? What is the 3 existences here? Probably means the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. When you don't realize emptiness, you keep on, you're a migrator. You're in samsara, you keep on wandering. Although it doesn't, in fact, abide in all sentient beings. Emptiness abides in all sentient beings, right? I think I've mentioned to you before, Lama Yeshe used to say, you shouldn't think that emptiness is something holy. Even excrement has emptiness, What's really holy, what's really rare, is the realization of emptiness. So although the Dharma Dhatu, emptiness, abides in all sentient beings, when you don't understand it, you wander in the three realms. And then Jeffrey's second translation of the second verse, just this is also the Dharmakaya, or the body of truth. And the nirvana that is the purity, okay, so here the nirvana, which is the purity from having purified of klesha, that which serves as the cause of cyclic existence. And then he has in brackets, due to being together with the adventitious defilements. So you just me saying that it'll be unclear. Let's go. Let's read the commentary here. So Lama Tsongkhapa explains these two stanzas state that when the ultimate nature of things, which are stained or tainted with the stains, is purified, that constitutes nirvana and dharmakaya. Let me see. Okay, some of you are looking at your books, some of you are writing, thinking. Okay, what is this saying? So this statement says that when the ultimate nature of things, tainted with the stains, is purified, that constitutes nirvana and dharmakaya. Or as Jeffrey says, translates that same Lama Tsongkhapa statement in a different way. The nature of phenomena is accompanied with defilement. Okay, what does that mean? The nature of phenomena is, let's say the ultimate nature of phenomena is emptiness, right? But that nature of phenomena for an ordinary being, before they've eliminated the afflictions, is accompanied with the defilement or stains of the afflictions. They are still present. So say for even when you have true cessations, before you've reached the eighth bhumi, although you've ceased some of the afflictions, not all of them, not all of those afflictions are here referred to as stains. Not all of them are removed. Mainly talking about the afflictions here. It also indirectly refers to the obstructions to omniscience in terms of dharmakaya. But here, if you're talking about nirvana, you haven't yet reached nirvana. You've eliminated some of the afflictions, but there's still some within your, still staining your consciousness. So those are called adventitious stains, right? Why are they called adventitious? Does anyone know the definition of the word adventitious? Shanka knows. What is it?
It can be removed. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's
Yeah.
due to something that's due to causes and conditions, which may be always there for you now, but which can be removed, right? Paul, would you agree with that? You have another definition?
Yes, no, that's the famous quote from Dharmakirti, right? The stains do not exist in the nature of them. They are adventitious. They do not exist in the nature of the mind.
Right. Yeah. So much of what we talked about when we talk about the conventional clear light nature of the mind, right? The stains are adventitious. They may perpetuate all the time in our consciousness, but they can be removed. So Hopkins translates that stanza that I found Jimpa's translation a little bit difficult to understand. Hopkins translates it this way: the nature of phenomena is accompanied with defilement in our ordinary state. And when that is purified, that means when you've abandoned all of the afflictions, all of the defilements or stains. Nagarjuna says that this nature becomes a nirvana and a truth body. So leave off the Dharmakaya, the truth body part. Let's say this becomes nirvana. So that nature of the mind, say the nature of our mind now has emptiness as its ultimate nature, right? But the nature of our mind now is still stained by these adventitious afflictions, adventitious defilements. That means the anger, attachment, and their seeds and so forth. They're not apparent in the direct realization of emptiness. They are whatever defilements that are still left that are not yet abandoned are subdued at that time. They do not appear to the mind when you're meditating on emptiness, but they're still there. Until they are, those afflictions are abandoned, you have not realized the state of nirvana. We know that from, talking about it in other ways, that nirvana is achieved not when you just have some of the afflictions ceased or abandoned, but when totally all of the afflictions are abandoned, you have achieved the state of nirvana. So this is talking about it from another point of view, from the point of view of when we talk about, say, for instance, our present. What is it when we talk about Buddha nature? Remember, we talk about two kinds of Buddha nature: the conventional Buddha nature, or the developmental Buddha nature, which is the conventional clear light nature of the mind. Remember, we talk about in our meditation. What is the ultimate Buddha nature? Nadine, do you know?
The emptiness of our mind.
Emptiness of our mind now, which is still together with these adventitious defilements. What, Rosia?
I have a question about the words that you're using regarding the afflictions, because you're saying relinquish and you're saying abandoned, and you're not saying purified. Does purification or, also mean, like, to me, abandon is, oh, I'm just letting them go, but they need to be cleaned up. Like, can you please
yeah. So
abandon?
Yeah. Jimpa uses the word relinquish. I don't like to use that so much, but when things are abandoned, generally abandoned means abandoned from the root along with their seeds so that they will never come back again. That's when we talk about, what is to be abandoned on the path of seeing. The intellectually formed delusions, intellectually formed afflictions. They are abandoned in the sense that it's not like they will ever come back again. That's a permanent cessation of them. Okay, that's the general meaning of abandon. When we talked about tranquil abiding, I mentioned several times that it's said that when you achieve the first form absorption, your mental state is of the form realm now, you have abandoned the desire realm delusions. But that's not an actual abandonment. That's just a suppression of them. You haven't abandoned them in the sense that those delusions will never come back again. The only way that you can cause an abandonment of the delusions, or I should say the afflictions, is for you to realize emptiness, and successively through the path, through the first bhumi, the second bhumi, up to the end of the seventh bhumi, you are abandoning those afflictions so that they will never come back again. So the emptiness of our mind now, while we're an ordinary sentient being, is said to be the ultimate Buddha nature. That's what Nadine reminded us, right? So when you achieve Buddhahood, so at that point, you have not only abandoned the afflictions, but you've also abandoned the obstructions to omniscience, right? You have achieved what is that? Does that emptiness of the mind, then the emptiness of the mind of the Buddha, is that called ultimate Buddha nature? Do you remember, Paul? That's not called Buddha nature. That's called svabhavikaya, the nature body of the Buddha. So the present emptiness of our mind is not the same as the emptiness of the mind of the Buddha. You might say, well, it is in one sense. The emptiness of our mind is the same as the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, but in another sense, the Buddha's mind is not only devoid of inherent existence, like our mind is devoid of inherent existence, but the Buddha's mind is also devoid of all of the adventitious defilements, the afflictions, the delusions, the klesha, and it's also devoid of the obstructions to omniscience. So it's super purified. It has a natural purity because it's empty of inherent existence, and it's empty of all of the other defilements that are being talked about here. Are you following? Is it making sense? Aida, what do you think? Okay, just thumbs up, okay. Mr. Shankar Mitra.
Would you repeat again? You mentioned that the emptiness, I understood the emptiness of the Buddha's mind is a sabhava vivekaya, but you said that it's devoid of all stains. It has removed all the obscurations to omniscience, and there was something else. There was a third thing, I think.
Oh, yeah, so it, like our mind, now when we still have afflictions, it is empty of the natural, empty of inherent nature. It's empty of inherent nature. It's empty of true existence, right? Our mind is empty of true existence. The Buddha's mind is empty of true existence. But the Buddha's mind is also devoid of any of the adventitious stains, the afflictions and the obstructions to omniscience.
I see. Yeah, you were just clarifying what the adventitious stains is divided into those two things. Yes. Okay.
So if you just talk about nirvana, when you're talking about the adventitious stains, you're talking about just the klesha. So when the mind is empty, say when you've realized nirvana, let's say at the beginning of the 8th bhumi for a bodhisattva, right? You achieve the Mahayana nirvana, because now you are equivalent to a Hinayana arhat in having abandoned all of the klesha and their seeds, right? So that state, that realization, you are realizing the emptiness of the mind at that point, and that mind is also devoid of all the adventitious stains. So there is a double purity. That is, it always was empty of inherent existence, but you're realizing that in lack of inherent existence, and that mind is also devoid of the adventitious stains. So there's said to be two kinds of purity there. Let me continue reading what Chimpa says here. This states that when the ultimate nature of things, tainted with the stains, is purified. I think why why it's mentioned this way is because there are two kinds of stains. There are the klesha. When those are eliminated, that is nirvana, right? And then there's the obstructions to omniscience. When those are eliminated, in addition, you have the dharmakaya, or in this case, the svavadikakaya. There's two kinds of dharmakaya, right? There's the wisdom dharmakaya and the nature dharmakaya. Okay, similarly, there are numerous instances in the treatises, the texts, sutras, and so forth, where the object of negation in the context of pristine ultimate reality is described as a stain. Right? Following? So similarly, there are numerous instances where the object of negation in the context of pristine ultimate reality, it is described as a stain, or as Jeffrey translates, there are many similar teachings that the word defilement or defilement is the object to be negated with respect to the purified nature of phenomena. So not only the natural, when it says purified nature of phenomena, let's say your mind is being purified, right? Purified of all of the stains and so forth. There are many similar teachings that defilement is the object to be negated with respect to the purified nature of phenomena. So then the text continues. Now, if it were impossible for the ultimate nature of things, that their emptiness, to become free of stains, if it was impossible for the ultimate nature of phenomena, which is emptiness, to be eliminated, to become free of stains, free of the klesha and the obstructions to omniscience. So we call them sometimes the obstructions to liberation. Those are the klesha. And then the obstructions to omniscience are the more subtle stains that prevent you from becoming a Buddha, right? If it were impossible for the ultimate nature of things to become free of these stains, endeavor to do so would be pointless. You would be always stuck with those stains in your mind. If, on the other hand, it is possible, then this implies that the object of negation does have an existence and is knowable. Okay, so what is this object of negation? It's not just the object of negation of inherent existence that we're believing in, or you could say true existence that you're believing in. That's being negated in the sense of negating something that never existed there from the beginning, or refuting that which never existed there from the beginning. But also we're refuting or trying to get rid of the stains that do exist there, the klesha and the obstructions to omniscience. So if, on the other hand, it is possible to eliminate these stains from the mind, this implies that its object of negation does have an existence and is knowable. So that means that object of negation are the klesha and the obstructions to omniscience. How are we doing? Diana, are you okay? Fine. Okay. Richard? Okay. Stephen, you're in the background, but you're following? I know you're low on bandwidth. You're okay. Okay, good. Shanka, you have a question.
Yes, my question is then, so normally when we define ultimate nature, we say it's the lack of true existence of a thing, right? So is this statement here that you just read, does that mean that when we say what is ultimate nature of thing, the real answer is that it is empty of inherent nature and it has stains? It is accompanied by stains?
Not exactly, but that's part of it. You can still say the emptiness of the mind is its ultimate nature. But when we're talking about this quotation from the Dharmadhatu Sutra by Nagarjuna, right? Nagarjuna wrote this praise. This is not a sutra. This is Nagarjuna's composition praising the Dharmadhatu. So the Dharmadhatu is talking about two different things here. It's talking about the emptiness of the mind and also a mind which is also, so that's called its natural purity. And the Dharmadhatu is also referring in a deeper sense to the fact that this mind is also devoid of adventitious stains, which do have existence beforehand, right? The klesha and the obstructions to omniscience, they do exist. Those are called objects of negation or objects of refutation of the path, as Michael reminded us, the correct terminology. I was going to say objects of negation or refutation of experience. So they do exist. So when the mind when you've realized the lack of inherent existence of the mind, you've realized one part of the Dharmadhatu, and when your state of mind is such that you are also devoid of all of the obstructions to liberation, the klesha, that state of mind is called nirvana. And when you've gone further on the bodhisattva path and you've eliminated the obstructions to omniscience, you're realizing emptiness. Your mind is empty of inherent existence, but it's also empty of the adventitious stains of the obstructions to omniscience. Then that is called svavavikakaya. Here it just says dharmakaya, which, there are two kinds of dharmakaya, right? Dharmakaya, which is the omniscient mind, and the nature of the Buddha's mind, that's called the svavavikakaya. So the emptiness of our present mind, which is still with the defilements, is called Buddha nature. So even the emptiness of the mind of the arhats, that is still called their Buddha nature. But when those arhats eventually enter the Mahayana path and become Buddhists, the emptiness of their mind now, which is not only free of the klesha, but also free of the obstructions to omniscience, that becomes the svavavikakaya. Okay, I see several people nodding. Paul is still pondering. It was okay.
Thank you, that clarified.
Okay. So, Snehi, how are you doing? You okay? I wasn't sure that you get your hair down. That's it. Okay, got it. Okay. Okay. So very interesting and sort of important when we talk about the Tathagata Garbha and other things, the nature of the womb of the Buddha, and so forth. So that was a quotation from Nagarjuna's praise to the Dharmadhatu. So as I mentioned, some Western scholars say, "Oh no, there's no proof it was written by Nagarjuna," but the Tibetan scholars, everyone agrees that it, in its profundity and its in its accordance and clarification of the Prasangika, it is definitely praise written by Nagarjuna. So let's go a little bit further here. So this is analogous to the following example. The rabbit's horn, I think rather than saying the definite article, that's almost sounds like it exists, right? Maybe say a rabbit's horn, which is the object of negation in the context of the phrase, the non-existence of a rabbit's horn, does not exist as a knowable object. Right? So for instance, when we say the non-existence of inherent existence is analogous to that, right? The non-existence of inherent existence. Does inherent existence exist as a knowable object? No, it doesn't exist at all. It's only an imagination. You know, there's an appearance of inherent existence, like there's an appearance of the horns of a rabbit on a foggy morning when you haven't had your coffee yet. You look out the window and you see a rabbit with his ears up and you think, oh, it has horns. There's an appearance of that, and your mind is maybe at that moment believing in that. You're saying you're calling your friend, your partner, your husband or wife. Oh, look at the horn with the rabbit with the horns. It's just something which you're imagining. It doesn't exist among objects of knowledge. So the rabbit's horn, which is the object of negation in the context of the phrase, the non-existence of a rabbit's horn, does not exist as a knowable, right? Yet one can still posit the absence of a vase whose object of negation, in other words, a vase, does exist in general as a knowable. We can posit that as the instance of a non-existence of a rabbit's horn. Whoa. Doris, what do you think? It's completely over our head. William? Easy peasy, right? Ron, what do you think? William.
I would like to comment.
Yeah.
In Tsong Khapa's 18 lines direct from Manchu Shri.
18 lines direct from, I don't know that one.
Well, it's something that I got from a course on Madhyamaka emptiness from Jimpa. But it says, the oneness of space and awareness, is proven by the son of a barren woman. The oneness of space and awareness is proven by the son of a barren woman. So this is another example of a non-existent. So I would like to say that the rabbit's horn, the son of a barren woman, and inherent existence are three, maybe not all of them, but are three non-existents that are logical categories in Buddhism. And that the realization of the emptiness of a non-existent, like a rabbit's horn or inherent existence or the son of a barren woman, is an example of any emptiness, because it is the awareness of what I would call, and here you have to correct me, what I would call an ultimate, the emptiness of a non-existent. Which
so that's not exactly right. The realization of the non-existence of a rabbit's horn, or realizing the non-existence of the son of a barren woman, is not an emptiness. The emptiness is defined as the absence of inherent existence. So those simply realizing say, for instance, you realize that the horns of a rabbit do not exist from your own experience and direct perception and so forth. You haven't realized emptiness. You can't then quote, put up on the internet on your blog, "I've realized emptiness." That's not,
Right.
okay. So anyway, let's go.
But in any case, they're all examples, as you said before, of non-existence.
Yeah. But there's not a logical category like that. But say, for instance, there are other famous ones. A sky flower. So have you heard that expression before? Well, Nadine, what's the implication of a sky flower?
A flower which grows in the sky without earth and without water. It's impossible.
Right. So it's like there's some flower there that's not rooted, doesn't have its roots in the earth or in maybe nowadays. What are the people that make? They have the big marijuana factories called hydroponics or something. Yeah, it's just in the sky. A sky flower. That's something that doesn't exist. There are many other kinds of examples that are cited, as William is pointing out. So let's see. Let's go on here. The non-existence of a rabbit's horn does not. The rabbit's horn, which is being negated there, when you say the non-existence of a rabbit's horn, that does not exist as a knowable in the same way that inherent existence does not exist as a knowable object, right? Yet, one can still posit the absence of a vase whose object of negation, namely the vase, does not exist in general as a knowable. So what does that mean? Do vases exist? Or can I say vase? What do you like? Who likes vase? Who likes vase? Diana, you prefer vase? You don't care.
But
Can't tell. No one's okay.
Those
So,
of Indian origin like vase.
vase. Okay, so vase or vase. Do they exist? They do exist, right? So can you talk about the absence of a vase? Yeah, you can. Say, for instance, in my room up here, well, there are some vases here, but say in a room where there are no vases or vases, you can say the vase does not exist. Remember the example I gave before, the elephant. There is no elephant in my room, right? There is an absence of elephant. It's talking about the same thing here. Elephants in general exist, but in certain circumstances, when you talk about a certain location, there is no elephant in my loft right here, my meditation loft. Or you can say there is an absence of a vase in a certain location. It was never a vase there, or no one, someone took out the vases that were there. Right now, there's no vase. That's what's being talked about. Yet one can still posit the absence of a vase in certain circumstances, whose object of negation, such as the vase, does exist in general as a noble object. You can posit that as an instance of that non-existence of a rabbit's horn. So this is kind of like what's the word? Recondite, or I don't know, sort of like, Jeffrey translates it. However, the non-existence of a pot, he likes pot for bumpa rather than vase, because generally in Indian literature, they don't, the word that we call bumpa in Tibetan, that people translate it as vase, Jimpa translates here as vase, generally means a pot. It's what a potter makes. Like you make pot to put water in or something like that. However, the non-existence of a pot the negative of pot, with pot as its object of negation and existing among knowable objects, can be posited as the non-existence of the horns of a rabbit. Okay, so I'm not going to go into more detail about that. It's just like a debating point of logic. Okay, Mikhail, what do you think?
I'm not sure. Yeah, is it saying that the rabbit horn is a non-existent, but the absence of the rabbit horn is a knowable, is an existent?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. So from the point of view of the ultimate nature of things that pervades all phenomena, right? The ultimate nature of things generally we think of as emptiness, right? The ultimate nature of things that pervades all phenomena. It's not only persons that are empty of inherent nature, also rocks and everything. So from the point of view of the ultimate nature of things that pervades all phenomena, both pure and impure, pure things and impure things, when we talk about the two categories of the 108 phenomena, the impure side and the pure side, where are we? This is indeed defined in terms of the negation of two kinds of self, where what is negated has no existence in reality at all, right? The self of phenomena, the self of persons and the self of phenomena. The self of persons doesn't exist at all, has no existence in reality at all. The self of phenomena has no existence in reality at all. However, as a given basis becomes progressively more purified of stains, in this case, we're talking about the mind, right? When a given basis becomes more progressively more purified of stains, its ultimate nature also, its ultimate nature too, becomes progressively more purified. So you could say its conventional nature is becoming more purified because the stains are being removed, but you can also say that its ultimate nature is becoming more purified. Usually we think the ultimate nature is emptiness. So how can you purify emptiness anymore? Its ultimate nature is being purified because the adventitious stains are being removed also. I remember when we studied Uttara Tantra, one of the 5 texts of Maitreya, that's not about Vajrayana. The word Tantra is used in a different way there. Kirti Senchab Rinpoche was teaching us in Bodh Gaya, and the expression about purifying the Buddha nature came up. And some students would say, you can't purify the Buddha nature. Buddha nature is emptiness. How can you say you're purifying emptiness? And Kirti Senchab Rinpoche said, you're purifying it in the sense that you are removing the adventitious stains from that particular basis. You can't talk about the same kind of removal of the ultimate, or the purification of the ultimate nature of a rock, of a stone or a boulder, because it can't be removed. It can't be that basis can't have adventitious stains removed from it. It doesn't have a mind, right? This is only in reference to a mind. Therefore, for certain special types of bases, it is inadequate to leave its purity only one-sided. Only, the realization of its natural purity. That is the lack of inherent existence. Its purity must also include the purification of the relevant adventitious stains. So here, when the adventitious stains of the klesha, when they are removed, that state of mind is called nirvana. So that's stating that nirvana is an ultimate truth, just like cessations in general are ultimate truths. It is an ultimate truth which is also within the mind of a person who has removed the adventitious stains of the klesha, and dharmakaya, or svavavikakaya, is the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, which is empty of the natural purity, empty of inherent existence, and also empty not only the klesha, but also the obstructions to omniscience. How are we doing? Richard, what are you thinking? You okay?
I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding exactly where the ultimate stains are, and they can't be in the ultimate nature, so they have to be in the mind of the person.
Right. So the crucial thing here was in Jimpa's text. However, as a given basis, becomes progressively more purified of stains. So that's talking about the basis of the mind.
Okay, right. Got it.
Its ultimate nature also becomes progressively more purified. So you might say, well, how can the ultimate nature become more purified? This is talking about a more refined view of this, that the ultimate purity of the mind is not just that which has always existed in it, that the fact that it is lacking inherent existence, but also when it is purified of all the adventitious stains of the klesha and the obstructions to omniscience. Therefore, for certain types of bases, that means minds, it is inadequate to leave its purity one-sided. Its purity must also include the purification of the relevant adventitious stains, and it is this such ultimate nature that is called the truth of cessation. So what does that mean? So when we talked about cessation, does anyone know the Sanskrit word for cessation? Snehi, do you know the Sanskrit word for cessation?
Nirodha?
Nirodha, yeah. So you've had your hand up for a long time.
I did, and then I thought and it was similar to Richard's question, but I still have this doubt after you were addressing Richard, which is, I always thought that like the ultimate nature of mind was, that example of the crystal, which is always pure, and everything that stains or looks like it stains that crystal is like the conventional nature, the adventitious stains and defilements and so forth. So I also am having this difficulty about how does the ultimate nature get more purified? Because everything that is a stain or a klesha, everything is at the conventional nature of mind. And the crystal stays a crystal.
Right. So I'll read again what Lama Tsongkhapa said here. Let me read this time Jeffrey's translation of that. Or let me read a little bit further, and Jeffrey further back. In general, pure and impure phenomena are qualified by this nature. Pure and impure phenomena are qualified by this nature, which is the absence of inherent existence. So pure phenomena, and let's say impure phenomena, like my present mind is an impure phenomena. You could say that its ultimate nature is pure, but my present mind is with defilement, right? The Buddha's mind is like a pure phenomena, right? In general, pure and impure phenomena are qualified by this nature, which is the absence of inherent existence. And in this context, the negatives of the two selves, self of person, self of phenomena, for instance, are negations in the sense that the object negated, namely inherent existence, simply does not occur among knowable objects. That's what you're referring to, the emptiness of the mind, right? However, when the phenomena qualified by this nature are gradually purified of defilements, their nature also becomes purified. So you might say, how did the emptiness become purified? Because the emptiness is related to its basis, right? You don't have an emptiness in general. You have the emptiness of a mind, an emptiness of a pot or a vase or a vase. It's always the emptiness of something. So that emptiness, in a sense, has a relationship, is dependent upon its basis, right? So when the basis becomes purified, you can say that the emptiness has become purified, more and more purified, until all of the stains, the adventitious stains, are removed, in which case that would become the Dharma Dhatu. Okay, so let me just read a little bit more what Jeffrey said. So this is what we've read in Jimpa, but maybe in a way that, for my mind, makes more sense in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation. So I'll repeat. Therefore, with respect to a certain phenomenon qualified by this nature, so we could say a mind which is qualified by lack of inherent existence, it is not sufficient for the nature to be partial purity. It must be also purified of the adventitious defilements in the basis, which accords with a particular position on the path. These are called true cessations. So there are true cessations, on the first bhumi, the second bhumi, all the way up through the end of the seventh bhumi, the beginning of the eighth bhumi. At that point, that final one is not only a true cessation, it's also a nirvana, because it's that state of mind is not only empty of inherent existence, but it is also empty of the adventitious stains of the klesha and their seeds. Okay. Oops. So then Jimpa says, many terms mentioned in the 10 Grounds Sutra contain the word truth in them, such as, quote, being versed in the truth of defining characteristics. I mentioned this last class in the Dasha Bhumika. It mentioned a whole list of truths. One of them was the truth of defining characteristics, or as Jeffrey says, the truth of definitions. So all of those are included in the two truths. And they have deeper meaning, which I mentioned a little bit from the commentary of the Dashibhumika by Vasubandhu and another famous pundit, I can't remember the name, Surya something, that explained what those different so-called truths were that were mentioned in the Dashibhumika. And among these other truths, there is none that is not encompassed in the two truths. Okay, this concludes the exposition of the fifth ground, the ultimate awakening mind, from the Illuminating the Intent exposition of Entering the Middle Way by Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah, William.
What are the adventitious defilements of the non-existent inherent existence?
They are the adventitious defilements of its basis. The emptiness itself doesn't need any more purification. It's already empty of inherent existence. But the basis that this emptiness is qualifying, like say, William's self, or the William's mind. William's mind was empty of inherent existence before, empty of inherent existence now, will always be empty of inherent existence. But when the basis, the mind, William's mind, is also purified of adventitious defilements, the emptiness of William's mind is said to be.
I understand that explanation, but it doesn't address the question. What are the adventitious defilements of inherent existence itself? The non-existent. What are the inherent defilements?
Contrary to your.
What are the
Okay.
What are the inherent defilements of a rabbit's horns? What are the inherent defilements of the son of a barren woman?
There are no inherent. Those are not the lack of a rabbit's horn and the lack of the son of a barren woman, the lack of a sky flower and so forth. Those are not instances of emptiness. They are just they are non-affirming negations, but they are not all non-affirming negations are emptiness. Emptiness.
How could they be the same as the emptiness of a pot?
They're not the same as the emptiness of a pot.
Can be posited as the sentence you read before. However, the non-existence of a pot, the negative of pot with pot as the object of negation and existing among knowable objects, can be posited as the non-existence of the horns of a rabbit. This sentence is the one that confuses me, and we just skipped it. So, all right, that's all.
As my childhood friend. Hey, how are you? I'm in the middle of a class. Sorry, I'll call you back later. Are you still there? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It's my childhood friend I went to kindergarten with. Our birthdays are both in July, so he was catching up. So what I mentioned, William, was that this particular point is talking about a point of logic. The non-existence of, let's see, what do we say? The non-existence of a rabbit's horn is a knowable object, right? William, you agree? The non-existence of a rabbit's horn is a knowable object.
As opposed to a non-existent.
Yeah, the rabbit's horn does not exist, but the non-existence, the realization, the knowing that a rabbit's horn does not exist, that is a knowable object. Do you know that a rabbit's horn does not exist, William?
Only linguistically. I've seen pictures.
Okay. Let's say the son of a barren woman. Do you know that the son of a barren woman does not exist?
I like the ones with blue eyes better, but I understand linguistically too that does not exist.
Well, whether it linguistically or not, according to the words, the son.
That's what linguistically means.
But the son of a barren woman refers to supposedly a son of a woman who cannot have children, so she can have a son. So the knowledge of, The
But
knowledge.
the oneness of space and awareness
Yeah.
is proven by the son of a barren woman. What does he mean by that?
I said it's a subtle point of logic. The lack of a son of a barren woman, or in this instance, the non-existence of a rabbit's horn, that is a knowable object. The non-existence of a rabbit's horn. A rabbit's horn is not knowable. Right? You can't know that. You can know that a rabbit's horn does not exist.
Exactly like inherent existence, exactly the same way.
No.
It's just that we're not convinced of the existence of a rabbit's horn, supposedly from all time.
Okay.
Does it help, Venerable, if we go back to Lorig, where it talks about how, the difference between a mistaken consciousness versus a valid consciousness and so on? Because the son of a barren woman or rabbit's horn appears to I'm not sure if valid is the right word, because they use it from the Chittamatra view, right? But in any case, the inherent existence appears to, let's just put a prasangika definition of mistaken here for a minute, but the inherent existence appears to a correct consciousness, right? In other words, we all agree that to us, inherent existence exists, right? But
we all agree that what?
We all agree that to our minds, things appear as inherently existent.
Yes.
Right. So we have correct consciousness to which an inherent existence appears.
Okay. So for prasangika, those are all called mistaken consciousnesses.
Yeah. I understand. But that's what I'm saying. For now, let's keep aside prasangika for a minute.
Go on.
Right? I'm just trying to use like kind of English words that we all understand what it means, right? So the inherent existence, things appear as inherent existence to all of us who we believe have correct consciousness, right? However, the son of a barren woman only appears to an incorrect consciousness, right? As a knowable object.
Okay, so I can see William is already shaking his head here. Let's leave that for the time being. We're at the end of our time. I wanted to mention something else. We finished the 5th chapter. Next week will be our, if I'm not mistaken, is our last class of this section? Yeah, right?
No, we have a class next week.
Next week is our last class, right?
Next week is the last class, yes.
So I will go over a little bit of this again, and also give a review of our first 5 bhumis and a little bit anticipation of the 6th bhumi, which we will begin 3 weeks. We'll have a 3-week break. I was thinking there would be a 4-week break, but we're going to begin when, Snehi, on
September 2nd.
September 2nd rather than September 9th, like I was thinking. So we're going to have a 3-week break. Then we're going to begin the 6th bhumi, or the 6th mind generation. Hopefully, if we let people know, there might be some people who would like to join at that point because they can start from there. I just wanted to mention a little bit about cessation before we end. We actually are already over time, but I just wanted to mention there is a famous incident in the life of Shariputra, when Shariputra had been studying with this non-Buddhist teacher when he was young. What was his name? One of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers at the time of the Buddha, Sanjaya Vaitraputra. He was one of these people that had many kinds of wrong views, but had many, many disciples. Shariputra and Moggallana didn't have those names. They weren't called by the names at that time. They were both disciples. They had had a lifelong pact of wanting to achieve the life, the state without death, the deathless state. What was in Indian philosophy was considered to be the kind of like moksha, nirvana, or whatever. And they had both got fed up. They didn't feel that this teacher was going to be able to lead them any further, and they went their ways. Shariputra had this pact with Moggallana that when one of them found the true path, they would come to the other and tell them about it so they could practice together. So at one point, Shariputra is north of Rajagiri, and he sees this apparent saint, some person, mendicant, going for alms, who happened to be Asvijit, who was one of the 5 disciples that the Buddha first taught the Four Noble Truths to. You were one of the 5 disciples that the Buddha, spent the 12 years in ascetic meditation with. Asvijit was also from Kapilavastu. He was the son of one of the ministers that was present when when Siddhartha was prophesized as becoming a universal teacher. Anyways, long story. So Asvijit was there. In Sanskrit, they call him a saji. And Shariputra saw there's something about this guy. He's very composed. His eyes are clear. It's something special. So he went up and asked him what his understanding was. He'd like to learn from him. And Asvijit said, I'm just a beginner. I've just begun this path. My teacher, Shakyamuni, is the person you should seek. And Asvijit and Shariputra asked him, well, can you tell me, just give me a little bit of the teaching? Come on. Kind of like our class. And Asvijit said this famous stanza, Ye dharma hetu prabhavat hetum tesham tatagato haivadat tesham chayo niroda evam vadi mahashramanaya. Do you know what that is? Does anyone know? What is that called? Anna, you know?
We recite. Oh, sorry.
Anna, do you know what that is?
I was also going to say with Shanka, I'm always reciting that. Isn't that referred to emptiness?
This is, this is what Asvijit told Shariputra. If you put an om at the end and a svaha at the end, if you put an om at the beginning, a svaha at the end is sometimes called the mantra of dependent origination or dependent arising. Om yed. So when you do purification of the speech in the morning, you recite the vowels, e, u, you recite the consonants, and then you recite the mantra of dependent origination. So the vowels are white, the consonants are red, the mantra of dependent origination is blue. So it's talking about this word nirodha that we're talking about here. I asked Snehi earlier in the class, what do you know that word for cessation in Sanskrit? So nirodha. So the translation of that is, of those phenomena that are produced through causes, the Tathagata has proclaimed their causes and also their cessation, their nirodha. Thus has spoken the great renunciate, the Shramana. Ye dharma hetu prabhava. So that means of dharmas, ye means of dharmas that are produced from causes, because not everything is produced from causes, right? Phenomena which are permanent are not produced from causes. Of phenomena produced through causes, the Tathagata has proclaimed their causes. Hetum hetun tesham tatagato haivadat. And also their cessation, their nirodha. Tesham chayo nirodha evam vadi mahashramanaya. So I just wanted to mention that because some of you do recite that mantra to know where it came from. It was kind of considered, still is considered to be a very potent antidote to misfortune. You know, when you're afraid that something is going to happen, to say that phrase, or you can say it as a mantra with an om at the beginning and a svaha at the end. But Asvajit just said that to Shariputra, who was amazed, and he went to see the Buddha along with Moggallana. They became his primary disciples after that. They brought along with them from the former disciples of this teacher that they had been studying with for a long time, who they'd left. Each of them brought 250 disciples with them. So they brought 500 disciples to the Buddha, who all became disciples of the Buddha. So it was like one of the first infusions of more disciples to the Buddha from that situation.
Venerable, I'm so glad I've always wondered where that thing comes from, the Ome Dharma Hitin Prabhava Hitin Tasang. Yeah, so thank you for explaining all that.
Yeah, I'll mention a little bit more next week also about these
could you put the
personalities.
translation, maybe if you could get, not Dottie, Doris, or to put it on the Facebook thing or whatever, that would be really helpful.
Dottie.
I don't know why I said Dottie, but Doris.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful where you got it from.
Yeah. So I'll do that. We'll put up a PDF on our Facebook page. So before we end, am I leaving anyone? I'm leaving Snehi with some apprehension, so she needs to check something. What say?
Venerable, what were you saying about purifying speech in the morning? I've not heard that before, about the vowels and the consonants.
Oh, so when you do retreat, well, generally, our speech includes many negativities, right? We even if we don't lie or cause division or use abusive speech, which we might, we're idly gossiping, and so we create negative karma. There is a meditation to do when you first get up before you've spoken. You can find it in the FPMT handbooks and so forth, but it's very famous. It's called purification of the speech. So also when you recite mantra, it's very, very, very useful to first having purified the speech with this procedure, that the karma that you create in saying the mantra has more potency if you've purified the speech this way. So what you do is you take refuge, generate bodhicitta, you visualize on your tongue a circle of the vowels in Sanskrit. Om, and usually it's sort of a mantra. Om, a, e, u, ri, li, a, I, om, svaha. And then the consonants, om, kaka, kaka, ga, cha, 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 nya, ta, 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 ta. The FPMT book has some mistakes in, unfortunately, in saying what these consonants are. But anyway, and then that's a circle of red consonants, and then a circle of the mantra of dependent arising, dependent origination that we just mentioned here, how it arose from the statement by Asvajit to Shariputra. And you imagine then light goes out to all the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the Arhats, and draws back all of their purified speech that absorbs into them. You imagine sending out light from those syllables also to the elements and so forth, drawing back the force, power of all of the elements into those syllables. And then you imagine light going out and withdrawing the 7 symbols of the chakravartin, the precious wheel, the precious jewel, the precious queen, the precious minister, the precious elephant, the precious horse, and the precious general, all of them absorb into those syllables, which then absorb into your tongue and bless your tongue so that your speech becomes empowered. The virtue you create by saying mantra and other virtuous things are increased, and it purifies the negativities of the idle gossip and other actions of speech that you may do that day. So in almost all tantric sadhanas, when you do retreat, there's always a purification of speech at the beginning. Sometimes it's a little bit different, but usually always includes those factors.
So it's 3 concentric circles in the white, red, and blue with the visualization you just explained?
Essentially, yeah. So if you take a look at the FPMT prayer handbook, you'll find it in there. If not, we can probably set it up as a PDF and put up on our Facebook page.
There's a publication on the FPMT called Blessing the Speech, I believe, that has it specifically, but it's also for those of us who've gone on retreats with Rinpoche, it's also in the FPMT retreat prayer book, which is the big, thick thing.
That's what I was thinking of, the big.
The FPMT retreat prayer book. I think they republished it in 2021 or 2022. It's got some changes, but yeah.
Okay. So a lot's done. Nadine.
Venerable George, I just want to agree with what Rocio said, that what you explained today about ultimate Buddha nature was extremely inspiring and extremely helpful. Thank you so much. Helpful for the practice of Guru Yoga, for example. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we'll continue about more about that next week. Let's now dedicate our virtues. We definitely have created some. Snehi's going to put up the prayers, which you all probably already know by heart. Due to these virtues, here it says merits in the English translation, but the Tibetan says gewa, due to these virtues, because we've created not only merits, we've created collection of wisdom, right? Which are both virtuous. So to say due to these merits is a little bit incorrect. Due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state. So this is our conventional dedication. You imagine the virtues that we've created in the past, in the future, and especially today, because of our special motivation, dedicating them that they ripen in such a way that we will quickly become a Buddha, Guru Buddha, in order to lead sentient beings into enlightenment. And then the prayer which is here considered kind of a dedication that we talked about before. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And as you remember from our talk about the 37 facets of enlightenment, this is in the 4, after the 4 close placements of mindfulness, there's 4 factors that are called sometimes the thorough abandonments or the thorough endeavors. These are among that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has passed away, so there's no need for. Oh yeah, so here's the swift return. Okay, good. So this is more concise. Peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones, you Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, the victorious Losang, father and sons, together with your lineage, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, were the armor of patience that is never discouraged. incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make this request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings, as well as striving for other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this, I am lost. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of the bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us, we fortunate disciples. And finally, you, all our spiritual friends, Dalai Lamas, other Lamas that are our teachers, you are our eyes for viewing all of the infinite scriptures. You are the supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by sewa. So that means both love and compassion. All illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. And then finally, seal that dedication, the conventional dedication, the emptiness of the three spheres. Merits dedicated are empty of inherent existence. They appear, we can think about them, we have an understanding of them conventionally, but their ultimate nature is to be empty of inherent existence. The goals dedicated to are continued spiritual development, the quick recognition of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our achievement of enlightenment, and so forth, all cognizable by our mind conceptually, appearing to be inherently existent, but actually empty of inherent existence. And the act of dedication, trying to connect with our aspiration, these merits with those consequences, cause and effect, that's a process that can't be found anywhere. It's just a designation on that process of connecting these with that. It can't be found anywhere. It's empty of inherent existence. So thank you very much. Paul, you have a last comment?
No, I don't know how that got up there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But thank you so very much, Venerable George, as always. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Hope Jennifer's okay.
She is in retreat in Sweden right now.
Oh, that's right. Right. She's mentioned. Okay. So look forward to seeing you on Monday. Those of you who would like to come to our discussion group, and next Saturday here. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable George.